Prophecy expert and lecturer Terry James is the general editor of RaptureReady.com, the #1 prophecy website on the internet. And it reaches more than 3.2 million visitors each month. But in 1993, Terry lost his eyesight due to a degenerative retinal disease that left him blind. However, thanks to an innovative program called JAWS, Terry's now able to write and use the internet. Terry, we're just thrilled to have you here on The Harvest Today, and you've just got hundreds and thousands of people who are clicking on this website. 3.2 million people have gone to RaptureReady.com.
Well, my story is really the story of the Lord, I believe, because I was in public relations for my earlier, younger life, and I developed an eye problem, and it eventuated in my losing my eyesight, retinitis pigmentosa, which is a degenerative retinal disease. And so I lost my eyesight completely in 1993 when I was 51 years old. So, but since that time, God has given me 18 books. I'm writing my 18th right now.
What are what's on your heart right now that's a passion that you want to communicate to people, that you feel like in this hour is very important, because you're using your books to communicate something that God has put on your heart?
All the UFO things we see happening, I believe, is another end-time sign. Besides the violence, we've got Israel again as a nation, and then we've got all the sightings and abductions that are regular fare now, really, on things like Discovery and other channels every week. Well, what are these things?
And what do they have to do? Yeah, and what do they have to do with Bible prophecy?
Well, they have to do with Bible prophecy because Jesus said it would be the same as it was then. And there's no other explanation for these things except that they're extraterrestrial, and the physics of the thing does not allow for these things to be able to travel these great distances, so far as we understand physics and
so you think they're real? This is real?
I think they are spiritual. They're dimensional. They're fallen angels rather than the...
Oh, so demonic.
Yeah, they're demonic. But Bible prophecy, I think, is coming to play in our time, just as Jesus and the prophets said it would, Apostle Paul, and so forth. So that's what my novel, The Rapture Dialogue, is about end-time prophecy, but particularly dealing with the UFO situation, the sightings, and these sort of things. But on my other books, I deal mostly with nonfiction area, dealing with things like the rapture and so forth.
Right. I don't mean to, you know, is the word rapture mentioned in the Bible? Because sometimes I think that's why people think, well, is this true? Is it actually mentioned?
But the word Trinity is not mentioned in the Bible, but it's based on precepts and upon many scriptures. Now, the harpazo, the Greek, is mentioned, is written in the Greek. It means a calling up, a catching up. Okay. And it was changed later in the Latin Vulgate, in the translations, to rapture. And that's what most of the modern writers have stuck with as far as dealing with this subject. Human condition had become so contaminated in every way, sin of course, but also genetically, that God actually repented, it said, that he made man, and he actually had to destroy all of mankind with the exception of Noah and his 7 family members. So we have it from Jesus' own words that it would be again much like it was in the days of Noah. Now we see all the things happening around us today, and I believe somebody mentioned to me they would like to maybe briefly touch on prophecy. We see all the things happening today, particularly involving Israel being back as a nation, again after such a dispersion of almost 2,000 years. And so this UFO revisitation, which is not extraterrestrial at all, I believe, but extra-dimensional anyway. In other words, these demon spirits revisiting our planet.
Terry, we're getting a lot of calls and emails from people who are watching what's going on in the Middle East. And you are a prophecy expert. You've studied eschatology for years and years. What would you say as far as, again, you mentioned the lateness of the hour, but what we're seeing happen right now in Israel with it being bombed by Hezbollah in Lebanon and from the Lebanon strongholds. What does Bible prophecy have to say, and how would it fit in with what we're seeing?
I think right now we are seeing in particular Zechariah chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, where it says that Israel will become a cup of trembling and a burdensome stone to the whole world. And it won't really be Israel's fault, but it'll be because of satanic attack against Israel. I think we see that happening.
Welcome to Prophecy Watch.
And meanwhile, I want to introduce a very special guest today. I'm so happy, Terry, James, to have you with us here on Prophecy Watch.
Thank you, Philip. Such a pleasure to be with you always.
Well, friends, Terry is one of the most prolific prophecy authors I know. He's been writing prophecy books and editing these, bringing in the top prophecy scholars in the world in multi-volumes of books. Terry, since what year about?
1993. Basically.
1993.
Well, it's fiction and biblical fiction. It's not. The other books have been nonfiction. Most I've written a couple of other fiction books or novels, and this, of course, is a novel. This gets us into the Ephesians chapter 6 area of Bible prophecy, and also into the era in which we live today, where we're up against great spiritual battles as Christians and as people in general. And so I try to deal with that in this novel, and it is fiction, but it is biblically based.
Well, Terry, I've always admired you for that, biblically based, as you mentioned. That's exactly where this program because the Lord Jesus said there is a time coming that'll be just like as in the days of Noah. You remember that, Terry?
Absolutely. In Luke 17, verses 26 through 30, basically, Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, and he likened that also to the time of Sodom and of Lot and the destruction of Sodom. And in that, there's great spiritual warfare going on at the time, and I think we see that recurring. But one of the chief characteristics of that era, of that antediluvian time, was that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair and came into them. The sons of God here is the B'nai Elohim. They are the fallen angelic beings that were cast out of heaven with the rebellion. And so the book deals with that, and I think that we can translate that down into some of the demonic type and spiritual warfare in high places things we see going on today.
So we would expect some of this spiritual warfare that was particularly foreboding in Genesis chapter 6 to reappear in the last days.
Yes, and you know, we can get specific in that. I think the Apostle Paul, the great apostle, got very specific in the 2 Timothy chapter 3 account of the perilous times. Individual instances of how men would be dealing with the spiritual warfare as time progresses, and so even that was prophetic in its intonation, I think, and the perilous times that Paul talked about, all part of the spiritual warfare of Ephesians chapter 6.